Captain Park Minho felt the metal deck plates vibrate beneath his boots as the Defiant Dawn dropped out of hyperspace with a thunderous roar that echoed through the ship's massive hull. The bridge lights flickered momentarily as the quantum engines powered down, leaving only the soft blue glow of the control panels illuminating the faces of his crew. 200 years. 2 centuries since humanity had been cast out into the cold darkness between stars, branded as warmongers and savages by the alien coalition that now occupied their home. Minho's great-great-grandmother had been aboard this very ship when they fled Earth, carrying with them the last remnants of human civilization and a burning promise to return. Captain, sensors are picking up multiple contacts. Lieutenant Kim Yuna called out from her station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed dozens of red dots surrounding the third planet from the sun. Her voice carried the same barely controlled rage that every human aboard felt at this moment. Hegemony patrol craft, sir. They're there everywhere. The main view screen shimmered to life, revealing the sight that made every person on the bridge catch their breath. Earth hung before them like a wounded jewel, its blue oceans still beautiful, but scarred by massive mining operations that carved ugly brown wounds across what had once been green continents. Strange, angular ships with hulls that gleamed like polished bone circled the planet in perfect formation, their alien design a stark reminder of how much had changed. Minho gripped the arms of his command chair until his knuckles went white. The ship around him was a testament to human ingenuity, born from 2 centuries of desperate innovation in the void between galaxies. Every bolt, every circuit, every weapon system had been forged in the cold furnaces of Exile, refined by generation after generation who dreamed of this moment. "Sir, I'm detecting massive industrial complexes on the surface," reported Ensign Bei Eugen from the science station, her young face pale as she read the sensor data. "They've strip-mined entire mountain ranges. The Amazon basin. It's completely gone, sir." Commander Lee Jiwan stepped up beside Minho's chair, her dark eyes reflecting the pain they all felt. She had been born aboard this ship, raised on stories of Earth's forests and oceans, trained for this day when humanity would reclaim its birthright. "Captain, we're receiving transmission intercepts from the surface." The communications officer's hands trembled as she routed the audio through the bridge speakers. What they heard made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. Alien voices speaking in harsh, clicking languages, coordinated work schedules. For human labor gangs, the reports detailed quotas for mineral extraction, shipping schedules for processed materials, and casualty rates among the workforce that were discussed with the same emotional detachment used for broken machinery. "They're using our people as slaves in their own minds," Giwan whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "Generation after generation, working until they die to fuel the hegemony's expansion." Minho stood slowly, his eyes never leaving the image of Earth on the screen. The planet that had given birth to Mozart and Einstein, to explorers who had reached for the stars, and dreamers who had dared to imagine a better future, now served as nothing more than a resource extraction site for alien overlords. "Navigation, take us to the edge of the asteroid belt," he commanded, his voice steady despite the fire burning in his chest. "Full stealth mode. I want us invisible to their sensors while we conduct our reconnaissance." The Defiant Dawn was more than just a warship. She was a mobile city, home to 50,000 souls who had never seen sunlight except through filtered viewports. Her hull stretched for nearly 2 kilometers, packed with weapon systems that existed only in theory when humanity had first been exiled, quantum disruptors that could tear holes in space itself, reality anchors that could stop enemy ships dead in their tracks. And deep in her armored core, the Prometheus engine, a power source that could crack planets if unleashed. "Passive, sensors only," Minho ordered as they approached the outer system. "I want to know everything about their defensive positions, their patrol routes, their communication frequencies. Every ship, every station, every automated defense platform." Lieutenant Kim Yuna's fingers flew across her console as she coordinated the sensor sweeps. "Sir, their technology looks impressive, but it's built for intimidation rather than actual combat effectiveness. Large, slow-moving vessels with powerful shields, but limited maneuverability. They've grown soft," observed Chief Engineer Minseok from his position near the rear of the bridge. The grizzled veteran had spent his entire life maintaining the ship's exotic systems, 200 years of ruling without opposition. They've forgotten what real warfare looks like. As the sensor data streamed in, a picture emerged of an occupation force that had grown complacent. The hegemony ships moved in predictable patterns, their crews following rigid protocols that left them vulnerable to unconventional tactics. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten to watch the darkness between the stars. "Sir, there's something else," Una reported, her voice taking on a note of excitement. "I'm detecting encrypted transmissions from the surface. Human encryption protocols, very old ones, but definitely ours." Minho felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you saying there's still organized resistance down there?" "It appears so, Captain. Someone on Earth has been keeping the old knowledge alive." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. After 2 centuries of exile, humanity had returned to find their world enslaved but not broken. Somewhere down there, among the mining colonies and forced labor camps, the spirit of human defiance still burned. Minho looked around at his crew. These children of exile who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They were ready. The ship was ready. And after 200 years of waiting in the darkness, it was time for the galaxy to remember why they had feared humanity in the first place. The briefing room, aboard the Defiant Dawn, had never felt smaller. Captain Park Minho sat at the head of the oval table, surrounded by his most trusted officers. As 3 days' worth of intercepted alien communications painted a picture more horrifying than any of them had imagined. The holographic displays floating above the table showed streams of data, decoded transmissions, and surveillance footage that made his blood run cold. Intelligence Officer Choi Soman stood at the far end of the room, her usually calm demeanor cracked by the weight of what she had discovered. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights, spent decrypting alien databases and piecing together 2 centuries of lies. She had been the ship's top codebreaker since she was 16, following in her father's footsteps, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Captain, what we've uncovered changes everything we thought we knew about the Exile," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands as she manipulated the holographic controls. "The official hegemony records tell a completely different story than what they broadcast to the galaxy." The first display showed public hegemony broadcasts from 200 years ago, featuring alien news anchors with reptilian features and mechanical voices describing humanity as a warlike species that threatened galactic peace. The propaganda videos showed human military exercises taken out of context, making Earth's defensive preparations look like aggressive expansion. "This is what they showed the galaxy," Somin explained. "But look at this." The display shifted to show classified hegemony military communications from the same time period. The alien text scrolled past with human translations appearing below. What they revealed made Commander Li Juwan's jaw clench so hard that her teeth ground together audibly. "They were terrified," Juwan breathed, reading the translations. "Look at this report. Human technological advancement rate exceeds all predictive models. If current trends continue, they will achieve military superiority within 50 standard cycles." Navigation Officer Han Tajan leaned forward in his chair, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table. He had served aboard Exile ships for 30 years, watching human technology evolve in ways the original Earth governance never could have imagined. "They didn't attack us because we were aggressive. They attacked us because we were getting too smart." Somin nodded grimly and brought up another set of files. The Hegemony Council meeting records from just before the Exile are even more revealing. "Listen to this." She activated an audio file, and the bridge filled with the sound of alien voices speaking in their native languages, with translation software providing subtitles. The mechanical voice of the translation system made the words even more chilling. "The human species demonstrates unprecedented adaptive capability. Their rate of scientific advancement threatens the established galactic order. Recommendation: immediate preemptive action before they develop technologies that could challenge hegemony supremacy." Chief Engineer Ominsiok, who had been quietly reviewing technical specifications on his personal tablet, looked up with disgust written across his scarred face. "So they hit us first, then spent 2 centuries telling everyone we were the bad guys." "It gets worse," Somin said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. She brought up a new series of displays showing industrial facilities on Earth, but these weren't the mining operations they had observed from orbit. Hidden deep underground, in facilities that didn't appear on any official hegemony records, human prisoners worked on projects far more sophisticated than simple resource extraction. "They've been using us as an intellectual labor force," she explained, zooming in on surveillance footage of humans working with advanced alien technology. "Every major breakthrough the hegemony has achieved in the past 200 years, every new weapon system, every faster-than-light drive improvement, every medical advancement, came from human minds working under alien supervision. The room erupted in angry voices as the officers absorbed this revelation. Communications Officer Kim Yuna slammed her palm against the table. They stole our people's creativity and took credit for it. Look at this, Simon continued, bringing up comparative technology charts. In the 50 years before the Exile, human science was advancing exponentially. Quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space-time manipulation. We were on the verge of breakthroughs that would have revolutionized galactic civilization. She paused at a particular entry that made everyone in the room fall silent. Project Prometheus. Earth's scientists were developing something called reality manipulation technology, the ability to alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. Han Tajon whistled low. No wonder they were scared. That kind of power could rewrite the rules of warfare entirely. The irony is beautiful, Chief Engineer Ominsiok said with a bitter smile. They exiled us to prevent us from developing advanced technology, but isolation forced us to innovate in ways we never would have on Earth. Our Exile fleet has been developing weapons and defense systems for 200 years, without any outside limitations or ethical oversight committees. Captain Minho had remained silent through the briefings, his dark eyes absorbing every piece of evidence, every intercepted communication, every proof of the hegemony's deception. Now he stood slowly, walking to the large viewport that showed the distant glow of Earth's sun. Show me our current technological capabilities compared to theirs, he said quietly. Summon's fingers flew across the holographic controls, bringing up side-by-side comparisons of weapon systems, shield technology, and propulsion methods. The differences were staggering. Where hegemony ships relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers, human Exile technology had evolved toward efficiency, adaptability, and devastating precision. Our quantum disruptors can punch through their best shields like they're made of paper, she reported. Our stealth systems are completely invisible to their sensors, and our newest ships can literally fold space around themselves to become untouchable. What about numbers? Asked Juan. They have thousands of ships across their empire, Han Tajan answered, consulting his navigation charts, but they're spread thin, maintaining control over hundreds of worlds. Most of their forces are designed for intimidation and policing, not real combat. Minho turned back to face his officers, and they could see something had changed in his expression. The quiet captain they had known for years was gone, replaced by someone harder, more dangerous. 2 centuries of exile had forged humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. They wanted to prevent us from becoming too powerful, he said, his voice carrying a steel edge that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously. Instead, they created exactly what they feared most, a humanity with nothing left to lose and every reason to be angry. The holographic displays around the room flickered as Minho's words sank in. Outside the viewport, the Defiant Dawn continued, its silent patrol of the outer system, her weapon systems charged and ready, her crew prepared for a war that had been 200 years in the making. Signal the other Exile fleets, Minho commanded. It's time to collect on 2 centuries of unpaid debts. The briefing room's lights dimmed as Intelligence Officer Choi Soman activated the holographic display system. The air itself seemed to shimmer as 3-dimensional images materialized above the conference table, casting eerie blue shadows across the faces of Captain Park Minho's senior staff. What they were about to witness would shatter everything they believed about humanity's exile. Sir, after 72 hours of continuous data analysis, I can confirm that our worst fears don't even scratch the surface, Zomin began, her voice hollow from exhaustion and horror. The young officer had barely slept since they'd arrived in the Sol system, working around the clock to decrypt alien communications that had been hidden for 2 centuries. The first hologram showed a massive alien creature with 6 arms and crystalline skin, speaking in the harsh, clicking language of the Hegemony High Council. Subtitled translations appeared in the air as the creature's words were decoded by the ship's advanced AI systems. The humans have developed quantum manipulation technology 3 centuries ahead of our projections, the alien leader stated in the recording. Their rate of innovation threatens not just our military superiority, but our entire civilization's foundation. We must act before they become unstoppable. Commander Li Guan's face went pale as she watched the recording. She had grown up hearing stories about how humanity had been painted as warmongers and aggressors, justifying their brutal exile. This recording is from before the exile, 6 months before, Somin confirmed, bringing up a timeline that showed the careful planning behind humanity's destruction. They spent years preparing for what they called Operation Sunset, the complete elimination of human civilization as a galactic threat. The holographic display shifted to show surveillance footage of Earth from 200 years ago. The planet looked so different then, with sprawling cities reaching toward the sky and orbital stations gleaming like jewels around the blue world. But the footage wasn't from human sources, it was hegemony spy recordings, showing alien infiltrators documenting human research facilities. They had agents embedded in our government, our military, our research institutions, Somin explained, her anger barely contained. Look at this facility in Geneva. The image zoomed in on a massive underground complex where human scientists worked on projects that seemed to bend reality itself. This was humanity's most classified research center. The hegemony knew about it before most of Earth's leaders did. Navigation Officer Han Tajan leaned forward, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table. What were our people working on that scared them so much? The display changed again, showing technical schematics that made everyone in the room gasp. Weapon designs that could tear holes in space-time, shield generators that could make entire planets invisible, propulsion systems that didn't just travel faster than light, they could step outside the normal flow of time entirely. Project Infinity, Soman whispered. Humanity was developing technology that would have made us gods among the stars. The ability to create pocket universes, to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality, to become truly immortal through consciousness. Transfer Chief Engineer Ominsiok studied the schematics with professional interest. No wonder they were terrified. This isn't just advanced technology, it's evolution beyond what any biological species has achieved. The recordings get worse, Soman continued, bringing up audio files that filled the room with the sound of alien voices discussing humanity's fate. The translations that appeared made everyone's blood run cold. Complete extinction is the only viable option, one alien voice stated clinically. However, their intellectual capacity represents a valuable resource. Recommendation: preserve breeding populations for controlled research application. The room exploded in angry voices as the officers realized the full scope of the hegemony's plan. They hadn't just wanted to stop human advancement, they had planned to turn humanity into a slave species from the very beginning. They've been harvesting our people's minds for 2 centuries, Giwan said, her voice shaking with rage. Every breakthrough, every innovation that's kept their empire running, it all came from human creativity. Somin nodded grimly and brought up the most damning evidence yet. The display showed underground facilities on Earth where humans worked in advanced laboratories, their work closely monitored by alien overseers. But these weren't simple mining operations, they were research centers where human scientists, working under threat of death, developed the technology that had made the hegemony the dominant force in the galaxy. The faster-than-light communication networks that connect their empire, human invention, the energy shields that protect their worlds, human design, the terraforming technology that's given them dozens of new colonies, all of it came from enslaved human minds. Captain Minho had remained silent throughout the briefing, but now he stood and walked to the viewport that showed the distant glow of Earth. His reflection in the reinforced glass looked like a man carrying the weight of his entire species suffering. Show me what we've developed during the exile, he said quietly. The holographic display shifted to show the technological marvels that the human exile fleet had created during their 2-century journey through the void. Ships that could phase in and out of reality, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas, defense systems that could create impenetrable barriers in space-time itself. While they were using our enslaved people to improve their existing technology, we were starting from scratch and building something entirely new. Engineer Ominsiok explained with growing excitement. Our exile fleet didn't just survive, we evolved. The comparison charts that appeared next showed the technological gap between current hegemony forces and the human exile fleet. It wasn't even close. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, better armed, and protected by defensive systems that the aliens couldn't even detect, let alone counter. Sir, there's one more thing, Somin said, her voice taking on a note of fierce pride. The Prometheus engine project that Earth was working on when the exile began. We completed it. Every ship in our fleet is powered by technology that can manipulate reality itself. Minho turned back to face his officers, and they could see that something fundamental had changed in his expression. The quiet captain they had known was gone, replaced by someone who carried the fury of an entire species that had been betrayed, enslaved, and written out of galactic history. 200 years ago, they feared what humanity might become, he said, his voice carrying a deadly calm that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously. They were right to be afraid, but instead of stopping our evolution, they just gave us time to become something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. The holographic displays flickered and died as Minho's words echoed through the briefing room. Outside the viewport, the Defiant Dawn continued its silent approach toward Earth, her weapon systems charged with power that could reshape the very fabric of space itself. Signaled the other Exile fleets, Minho commanded. It's time to show the galaxy what 2 centuries of human innovation really looks like. The first rays of sunlight were breaking over the ruins of what had once been New York City when SEO Minjong pressed the detonation trigger. The explosion that followed wasn't just an ordinary blast, it was a pulse of pure energy that rippled through the Hegemony command center like lightning through water. The alien structure, built from their signature bone-white metal that had seemed indestructible for 2 centuries, simply crumbled into dust. Target eliminated, she whispered into her communication device, watching through her rifle scope as confused alien soldiers stumbled out of the collapsing building, moving to secondary objective. Halfway across the world in the ruins of Tokyo, Kim Ha-jun led his strike team through the underground tunnels beneath the Hegemony's main processing facility. The weapons they carried hummed with energy that made the air itself shimmer. These weren't the crude explosive devices the Resistance had been forced to use for decades. These were precision instruments of war, crafted by human ingenuity during 2 centuries of exile. Remember, we want the human prisoners alive, Ha-jun told his team as they approached the facility's power core. Everything else is fair game. The pulse rifle in his hands discharged with a sound like reality tearing apart. The alien guards didn't even have time to raise their energy shields before the quantum bursts tore through their crystalline armor like it was made of glass, 300 kilometers above Earth's surface. Captain Park Min-ho stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn as 3 Hegemony heavy cruisers closed in on his position. The alien ships were massive, each one nearly half the size of his own vessel, their hulls bristling with weapon ports that glowed with threatening energy. Trying to box us in, sir, reported Navigation Officer Hon Tajin, his hands dancing across the helm controls. Classic Hegemony pincer formation, Minho smiled grimly. Then let's show them why that formation doesn't work against ships that can ignore the laws of physics. Weapons Officer Ru, target the lead cruiser's shield generators. Weapons Officer Zhu Yemen's console came alive with targeting data as the ship's quantum disruptors locked onto their prey. Firing solutions locked. Captain, the aliens won't know what hit them. The Defiant Dawn unleashed its primary weapons, and the effect was nothing like conventional space combat. Instead of bright laser beams or explosive missiles, the quantum disruptors created tears in space itself. The alien cruiser's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb kinetic impacts, simply had no defense against attacks that bypassed the normal laws of reality. The first Hegemony ship came apart like a house of cards in a hurricane. Its hull didn't explode, it just ceased to exist in several key locations, causing the rest of the structure to collapse in on itself. The crew had maybe 3 seconds to understand what was happening before their ship became an expanding cloud of debris. Direct hit, Ru reported with satisfaction. Their shields didn't even register the impact. The second alien cruiser tried to retreat, but the Defiant Dawn had already locked onto it, with targeting systems that existed partially outside normal space-time. The quantum disruptors fired again, and another Hegemony vessel simply vanished. In a flash of twisted light, Captain, incoming transmission from the surface, announced Communications Officer Bei Yunji, her voice tight with excitement. Resistance teams report successful strikes across all 6 continents. The aliens are in complete disarray. But the real news was coming from much farther away. As Bei Yungi's instruments picked up long-range communications from across the galaxy, the true scope of humanity's return became clear. Sir, I'm receiving reports from the Centauri system, Wolf 359, Ross 128, and 9 other star systems, she reported, her voice rising with each update. Human exile fleets are engaging Hegemony forces simultaneously across a front that spans half the galaxy. The carefully coordinated attack had been planned for months, ever since the first exile fleet had made contact with Earth's resistance. Every human colony that had been scattered across the void during the exile had been building toward this moment, developing weapons and tactics that the Hegemony had never encountered. On Earth's surface, the liberation was accelerating beyond anyone's expectations. Oh, Sung-ho crouched behind a pile of rubble that had once been part of the lunar mining facility's main processing plant. watching as his strike team used their advanced weaponry to cut through alien defenses like a hot knife through butter. "The containment fields are down," reported his second-in-command, Kim Nayin, as she worked to free the human prisoners who had been trapped in the facility for decades. "But sir, there are thousands of them, more than we expected." The sight that greeted them in the prisoner compounds was heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. Humans of all ages, many bearing the scars of forced labor and alien experimentation, stumbled out into the sunlight they hadn't seen in years. Some were so weak they could barely walk, while others stared at their rescuers with eyes that had almost forgotten hope. "Get them to the transport shuttles," Sung-Ho ordered, "and start collecting intelligence on other facilities. I want to know where every human prisoner in this system is being held." But the hegemony wasn't going to give up their empire without a fight. As reports of successful human attacks flooded in from across Earth and the solar system, the alien command structure made a decision that revealed their true nature. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy buildups from the hegemony orbital platforms," reported Lieutenant Kim Yuna from her sensor station, her voice suddenly urgent. "They're powering up their planetary bombardment systems." Commander Lee stepped forward, her face pale as she read the targeting data. "Sir, they're not aiming for military targets. They're targeting civilian population centers, New Seoul, the Berlin refugee camps, the Sydney agricultural zones." The bridge fell silent, as everyone realized what the aliens intended. Rather than face defeat, they were going to try to wipe out Earth's human population entirely. Captain Minho's expression went from determined to absolutely furious in the space of a heartbeat. "So they'd rather commit genocide than admit they were wrong." His voice carried a cold rage that made everyone on the bridge take an unconscious step back. "Deploy reality shields around every major population center on Earth. Full power, maximum coverage." The defiant dawn began to glow as systems that had been theoretical when humanity was exiled came online. Reality shields weren't just defensive barriers, they were bubbles of altered space-time that could make entire cities exist slightly outside normal reality, untouchable by conventional weapons. "Sir, shields are deploying," reported Chief Engineer Ominsiok from his station. "But the power requirements are enormous. We can maintain them for maybe 6 hours at full strength." "That's all we need," Minho replied, walking to the main weapons console. Charged the Nova cannons. "Full power to the reality manipulation systems. It's time these aliens learned what happens when you threaten human civilians." The weapons that the Defiant Dawn unleashed next weren't just advanced technology, they were attacks on the fundamental structure of reality itself. Hegemony fleets didn't just explode when the Nova cannons fired, they simply stopped existing, wiped from the universe as if they had never been built. Across Earth's orbit, alien ships tried desperately to retreat, but the human exile technology made escape impossible. Space itself bent around the fleeing vessels, trapping them in loops of twisted time where they experienced their destruction over and over again until even the quantum echoes of their existence faded away. The message was clear to every alien force in the system: humanity had returned, and they were no longer the species that could be pushed around. The morning sun streamed through the massive glass dome of the rebuilt United Nations building as Captain Park Min-ho walked through corridors that had been nothing but rubble just 6 months earlier. The structure rose from the heart of New York like a crystal spear pointing toward the stars, its walls embedded with quantum processors that coordinated the defense of an entire galaxy. Through the transparent walls, he could see the orbital shipyards where human engineers worked alongside grateful alien species, building vessels that combined the best of Exile technology with innovations from across the galaxy. The sight still amazed him. Massive construction platforms floating in perfect formation around Earth, each one capable of producing warships that could reshape reality itself. "Captain, the council chamber is ready for the sentencing," announced his aide, Lieutenant Park Ji-soo, her uniform bearing the new insignia of the Galactic Defense Force. The young officer had been born during the exile, but now she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen humanity triumph against impossible odds. Minho nodded and made his way toward the central chamber, where the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history waited for justice to be served. The chamber itself was a marvel of human engineering, its curved walls displaying real-time images from across the galaxy, showing the massive reconstruction efforts that were transforming hundreds of worlds. At the center of the room, suspended in energy restraint fields that hummed with barely contained power, the former leaders of the Hegemony Council waited for their fate to be decided. The sight of them would have been terrifying once massive reptilian creatures with razor-sharp claws, insectoid beings whose compound eyes reflected no mercy, and crystalline entities whose bodies seemed to be made of living metal. Now they look small and broken, their once proud forms diminished by the reality of their complete defeat. The lead creature, a 7-foot-tall reptilian with scarred hide that spoke of centuries of conquest, could barely meet the eyes of the humans who now held its fate in their hands. Judge Lim Suyang stepped forward to address the assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustic system. She was a small woman by human standards, but the authority she carried made every alien in the room fall silent. The documents in her hands contained the collective testimony of billions of beings who had suffered under hegemony rule. For 2 centuries, you enslaved an entire species, harvested their creativity, and attempted to erase them from galactic history. She began, her words translated instantly into hundreds of alien languages. Your crimes extend far beyond humanity. We have documented the systematic oppression of 47 different species, the destruction of entire civilizations, and the theft of technologies that belonged to others. The reptilian leader tried to speak, its voice a harsh rasp that had once commanded fleets. We maintained order. We prevented chaos. The galaxy was stable under our rule. Stable. Ambassador Shin Giwon stepped forward, his diplomatic robes, bearing the scars of battles fought in defense of innocent beings. Is that what you call the forced labor camps? The breeding programs designed to produce more intelligent slaves? The deliberate suppression of any species that showed signs of advancement? The evidence displays that materialized around the chamber showed the true scope of hegemony crimes. Entire solar systems strip-mined for resources, species driven to extinction for refusing to submit, and worst of all, the systematic harvesting of creativity and intelligence from any race that showed promise. The galaxy deserves better, Judge Lim declared. Therefore the sentence is as follows: complete dissolution of the hegemony political structure, full reparations to all affected species, to be administered under human oversight, and most importantly, you will spend the remainder of your lives working to repair the damage you have caused. But the real transformation wasn't happening in the courtroom, it was spreading across the galaxy as human technology began to reshape civilization itself. In the orbital workshops above Earth, Chief Engineer Oh Min-seok supervised the construction of ships that would have seemed like magic to the humans of 2 centuries ago. The new reality drives are performing beyond all expectations, he reported to Captain Minho during their weekly progress meeting. We can now travel between any 2 points in the galaxy in less than a day. The old hegemony hyperspace routes that took weeks are completely obsolete. The impact was immediate and profound. Species that had been isolated under hegemony rule suddenly found themselves able to communicate and trade freely. Worlds that had been forced to ship their resources to distant hegemony processing centers could now manage their own economies. The rigid hierarchy that had kept the galaxy locked in stagnation for millennia crumbled almost overnight. Sir, we're receiving requests for defense partnerships from over 200 worlds, reported Communications Officer Bae Yoonji as she coordinated the massive diplomatic effort. Everyone wants human protection now that they've seen what our ships can do. The transformation wasn't just technological, it was philosophical. Humanity's approach to galactic governance was completely different from the hegemony's iron-fisted control. Instead of ruling through fear and suppression, humans offered partnership and mutual advancement. We're not here to build an empire, Captain Minho explained to a gathering of alien ambassadors in the orbital conference station above Mars. We're here to make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Every species has the right to develop according to their own nature, free from outside interference. The proof was in the results. Within months, species that had been stagnant under hegemony rule began to flourish. The insectoid Clotheri, whose hive-mind intelligence had been suppressed for fear it would become too powerful, developed breakthrough communication technologies that connected distant worlds. The gaseous Vethany, forced to remain in primitive cloud cities, began constructing orbital habitats that existed partially in subspace. But humanity's greatest challenge was yet to come. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the new flagship Eternal Vigilance a vessel so advanced that it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The ship was twice the size of the Defiant Dawn, its hull incorporating technology that had been developed during the Exile and refined through cooperation with dozens of alien species. Commander Lee Guan joined him at the observation deck. where they could see the vast expanse of human space. Hundreds of ships patrolled the galactic rim, their sensors reaching out into the dark spaces between galaxies where unknown threats might lurk. The deep space monitoring stations are picking up something unusual, she reported, her voice carrying a note of concern that made Minho immediately alert. Long-range sensors detect massive objects approaching from outside the galaxy. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Minho studied the sensor readings that appeared on the holographic display. Whatever was approaching was huge. Each object was the size of a small moon, and there were dozens of them. Their approach was too coordinated to be natural phenomena, but too alien to be from any known species. How long until they reach the galactic edge? He asked. Based on their current trajectory and speed, approximately 18 months, Jawan replied. Sir, these things are bigger than anything the hegemony ever built. If they're hostile, Min nodded grimly, but his expression wasn't one of fear, it was anticipation. Then it's a good thing the galaxy finally has proper defenders. Signal all human fleets and our allied species. Whatever's coming, they're going to learn the same lesson the hegemony did. The response was immediate and overwhelming. From across the galaxy, human ships began converging on the outer rim, their reality-bending weapons charged and ready. But they weren't alone. Ships from dozens of species that had been liberated from hegemony rule flew alongside them, their crews eager to defend the new galactic order that had given them freedom. As the vast fleet assembled at the galaxy's edge, Captain Minho reflected on how much had changed since that first day when the Defiant Dawn had returned from exile. Humanity had not just reclaimed their place among the stars, they had become the guardians of something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The viewscreen showed hundreds of vessels spreading out across the galactic frontier, human and alien crews working together with a unity that the old hegemony could never have imagined. Whatever was approaching from the darkness beyond would find not a collection of conquered worlds, but a unified galaxy ready to defend itself. Humanity had returned from exile stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before, and they were no longer alone. The end.